Her body was always something to despair. It was fat, it was ugly, no room left to care. Its overgrown size left her feeling invisible. Nobody notices you when your body is large. Supersized, extra, extra, extra grande. She lugged that enormous body of hers into every day she unhappily woke up to. She forced it out of bed with a groan and a shove, hoping that today will be the day she gets skinny. The desperation and contempt she felt was overwhelming. She couldn't look into the mirror without feeling ashamed and vile. All she saw was her fatness, those lumps and bumps, all of the disgusting food that lived inside her fat. There were wobbles and dimples galore, not the cute kind. Veiny, stretch mark skin, her body, it was not pretty. It was not something anyone would ever look at and admire. This made her sad and angry and hungry. She was always hungry. Food was everything. It was all things. She blamed the food. She blamed her inability to stop herself from gorging everything in sight. This is what made her fat. The food made her fat. Of course it did. Food will only ever make you fat or skinny. The only food job has is to help you lose weight by being scarce or to put on weight. That is too scary to think about. And so the weight piled on, mouthful after mouthful, taking her self-esteem away and digesting it in her stomach acid until there was not an ounce left to be seen. She hated her body as much as she hated herself. She hated herself because she could no longer control her impulses. She hated herself because she was unable to stop herself from stuffing another bite into her already overexpanded stomach. It was a never-ending vicious cycle. There was no kill switch, no off button. She was pinned against the side as this viciousness strapped itself to each wrist, holding her against her will. The spinning was making her feel sick. Sick of eating, sick of being fat, sick of being angry, and sick of herself. She really did hate herself. Every single fucking disgusting inch of herself. But there was more to it. There always was. It wasn't the food. Food actually had nothing to do with it. Food was an innocent bystander that simply got sucked into the viciousness of her life. Her problem was that there was no love. Her parents didn't love themselves, so that missing love was all she knew. She grew up feeling it, feeling the emptiness of their love. This feeling surrendered her to a place of worthlessness, of never being enough for anyone, especially herself. That's when she started eating for comfort. Not only for comfort though, for love, for companionship, for punishment, until eventually she didn't know any other way to be. And hidden amongst all of that was her silence. A silence no one seemed to notice. A suffering wrapped up in her silence. A silence holding her back from speaking the truth about her hatred. A silence ensuring no word was ever uttered about her sadness and her anger and where they truly came from. Not that she fully understood it herself, but this silence was encouraged by her mind. It prevented her from exploring what was really going on. It pulled her away when she needed help. It told her lie after lie, but expressed them as the absolute truth, so she would believe every word. It was all one big fucking mess. A fucking mess she no longer wanted to be a part of. A fucking mess she knew she had to clean up. She was ready. Mop and bucket, vacuum, cleaning cloths, spray bottles were at hand to help her get stuck into the mess, to suck up all the dirt, to wipe away all the grime, to cleanse it all with water and wash away all those parts of herself that left her feeling stained and unclean. Her body felt filthy. Years of pain, punishment, and perversion clung to her insides. The build-up was inches thick. Layers of emotional wreckage scattered throughout her body like a plane crash in the deepest and darkest part of the jungle. It was time for her to wade through that jungle and find the pieces of herself lost amongst the rough and arid floor so she could decide which pieces stay and which pieces go. And never has she ever been so determined about anything in her entire life. She simply cannot keep going as she is. She believes there are only two choices right now. She either has a complete mental breakdown, from which she may never recover, or she goes within, to the depths of her being, to listen and to learn about the woman she once was and the woman she longs to be, to give herself the love denied to her, to forgive and let go. Both options are terrifying. Both options are unknown. They are the road less travelled. She hasn't ventured down either of those roads before. She has avoided them at all costs. That cost has been extortionate. She has nothing left to pay. She's so scared of what she might find inside of herself that she has avoided this for far too long. This option has shown up in her life many times before. It has stood quietly beside her, letting its presence be known. But she stared straight ahead, fear preventing her head from looking to its companionship. After a while, it discreetly disappeared, leaving her feeling a sense of relief that she didn't have to pay attention to what it was there to do. This time, however, she has chosen to give it her attention, to look directly at it and allow its love to take her deeper than she ever dared to go. Her body deserves that. She deserves that. For she knows her body cannot take any more of her punishment. It has endured so much these past few decades. It has been good to her. It has held strong as it possibly can. But now it is getting weak, heavy. Her emotional pain and her turmoil are resting in various parts of her body, causing physical pain. She can feel it swirling in a frantic tempo, pulsating and reverberating, getting more and more audible, more and more deafening. She has to listen. She has to stop moving and be still, to hear what her body is saying. She has ignored her body long enough. She has dismissed its warnings. She has shunned its attempts at reconciliation. For what? Why would she do that to herself, to her body? Hate, self-loathing, disgust. That's why. These occupied her feeling space, leaving no room for the good ones to enter. They tried. They squeezed themselves in every now and again, but with little room left, they were shouldered out of there pretty quickly. Those three shitty emotions kept her focused on all that was bad, all that was fucked up, and all that was wrong. Whenever her attention may have been swayed to something good or nice, they instantly took her attention away, showed her all that was wrong with herself and her body and her life. But the stirring deep inside never left. It was always on in the background with the volume turned down very low. Lately, though, the volume seemed to amplify, intensify until she could no longer ignore the sweet sound of herself. Her body was only asking for one thing, to be loved. And with that love, there were many things to do. Because her love was the driving force. Her love was going to release all of her trapped emotions that are stored in the fat of her body. Her body did not become fat because of food. Her body expanded with each and every disregarded and forgotten emotion, those feelings she believed were unacceptable and inappropriate. Food helped stuff those feelings way down into her body, inside her fat. She hid them there so she wouldn't have to deal with them. Yet every time she looked down at her disgustingly large body, she saw them protruding out of her in her bellies, her thighs, her bottom. She wasn't able to escape from them because she never let them go. She never allowed them to be what they were, so they stayed attached. The constant and incessant hunger she felt was also filled with her rejected emotions. Her hunger burned inside of her. The need for food was overwhelming. It was debilitating. It was automatic. Her control vanished. Something else took over, leaving her feeling as though she had no voice to speak her objections. She wanted to yell, to scream, to tell whoever it was to fuck off, that she had had enough. She wanted to fall to the ground sobbing and finally release all of these trapped emotions and feelings. But she couldn't. She could never lose control like that. She could never cry the way she wanted to. Crying was forbidden. Crying was showing too much emotion. Emotions were bad, very bad. That's why she froze them the instant they took flight. She couldn't have them overtaking her body and making her feel things she was not equipped to feel. So now her body is overtaken with all of that. Her hunger, her feelings, her emotions, every single fucking one of them. Let go. Let them go. Release them from the fat that has accumulated on her body. Release them from every inch of plump, wobbly, flabby, chunky, round and bulging part of her body. Release them from all that has grown undeniably large. The body of she contains every emotion she refused to feel. It is not her body that disgusts her so. Yes, the largeness and the oversized remnants of have her holding herself in contempt. That is only a symptom of a much more important complication. Her love. Her love for who she is filled with complications, difficulties, barriers, heartache. The entirety of her emotions and the inability to face them are what stretched and spread her body into the mass it has become. Food filled in the gaps. Food smothered her emotions until they fell down breathless and still. Food replaced everything she ever wanted to feel. Food replaced every word she ever wanted to scream and shout. Too much food, too little emotion. The perfect storm of obesity. The perfect combination to numb herself into believing her body was failing her. That her body was the problem. That her body was incapable of complying with her demands to be skinny. Her mind dove into that cesspool of distraction, and it agitated and stirred up a whirlpool of thought that had her thoroughly convinced her body was not good enough. Day after day, her thoughts ran rampant. They reminded her every moment of her existence that she was not skinny yet. That she would probably never be skinny because who would love her anyway? Fat or skinny. Fat or skinny, she was disgusting. Fat or skinny, there was no way in a million years anyone was ever going to look at her as more than a fat, horrid body. Because when she looked in the mirror, that was all she saw. Her body. Her body was the only thing about her. It was all she was, is. Behind her body, the woman inside was nowhere to be seen. She's in hiding, refusing to come out. So her body walked the earth as a shell almost empty of its inhabitants. For she was curled up in the most faraway corner, unable to pull herself to her feet, unable to stand up and own her body, own herself. She cowered in her own fear. She felt so small that she couldn't fill up her own body. She kept herself tucked away so as not to make her presence known to others. Her corner kept her safe. It was her comfort. There she could stuff herself silly with food and wallow in her own shit. Her corner was all she knew. This uncomfortable knowing glued her to the fear of stepping out into herself. She was frozen and rigid, body stiff and inflexible. Her body ached. It was hurting from years of neglect, from days and weeks of uncomfortable distress, curled up in quiet dissonance. Her body begged and begged many a time to be set free, to be unfurled and unfolded, to stretch each limb once again, one by one again, movement. Let the blood rush into every extremity, feel the energy swirling effortlessly as it had done in days she can now barely remember. It's that long ago memory of when she was someone else. new to this world and full of love and hope, happiness and joy, an isolated shadow haunting her dreams, urging her to wake up and remember. Her awakening is imminent. Her eyes are beginning to flutter, the imprint of this dream burning itself to her vision, eyes and heart and body opening to the images of a little girl, happy with herself, enjoying life without the concern and carnage of a bruised and battered body. She can see into herself in the most caring and loving way. She holds the stare of the woman she thought she'd be, a woman who ceased to exist. Instead, the woman who shakily stands in her place is the woman she was always meant to be. Unbeknownst to her, this was her chosen path, the path of love unreceived, that path of disgust and hate. She had to walk this path so she could reach this very juncture. She had to endure every heartache and mean word so she could find her way back to the love she eternally held on to. But in order to find it once again, she needed to stray from the path she set out in front of her. Every single twist and turn that took her into the unknown, that took her to another dead end, that took her to the edge of the cliff, was deliberate and intentional. When she reached the edge of the cliff, she wanted nothing more than to jump into the abandon and end it all, to wipe the pain from her sorrow clean away. She wanted to fall into the nothingness and never return to all she had known. But she couldn't. She wouldn't. A visible yet determined force encouraged her legs to step back from the edge, to turn around and continue on the dark and miserable path. For it knew one day she would emerge into the light, that one day she would open her eyes to see what has faithfully always been in front of her this whole time. That her eyes would search amongst the debris of her heart to find it is still beating. That her heart still beat for her. That her heart pumped love into every cell of her body. A body she came to despise, but a body that predictably and dependably loved her even when she couldn't love it back. So now she has risen and taken a step forward. She's been given a glimpse of the future, a future where she no longer hates herself, no longer hates her body, no longer hates the woman she has become. Her body, whatever the size, deserves to be loved. Her body will no longer accept being despised. Her body will show her how to care. Because her body is here to live. It is here to experience the joy and the wonder of every feeling, every emotion, every touch, every caress, every tingle, every high and every low. Her body is bursting with anticipation.